How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? It's another fine Thursday night with your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast, and we have so much to get into this week, whether it be promos in AEW, rabbits hiding in QR codes, and people who may or may not want out and may not have a choice in the matter, depending on what their promoter is telling them this week. So stick around, folks. The Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast starts right now. Good evening, everybody. It is your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast on another fine Thursday night. I'm your guy, Will. We got Damian G joining us from the Lone Star State on the right side of the screen, and the Giant Crab joining us on the left side of the screen. Gentlemen, how's it going this evening?
Stressful.
We didn't get a hurricane.
I know we are not in Florida, none of us, but we are thinking of the folks in Florida because it has
Correct.
been a hell of a week. And I think the stories down there are just starting to come out about what the situation is. And God, that's probably going to be ongoing through the weekend. Just the reality of Hurricane Ian and everything that has happened.
Weeks, actually,
yeah,
because they have to physically rebuild infrastructure, all of the creature comforts that you think that you just take for granted. They have to physically rebuild the power grid. It was decimated in counties in the Fort Myers area. So
yeah,
if you have somebody in Central Florida, Jacksonville, Charleston, South Carolina, maybe up and through Atlanta and all along the Eastern Seaboard, reach out to them, while you still can, because it's about to get real as the hurricane is out in the water right now and will regather itself, slap on a little bit of Old Spice across the face and then head back in to do business inland. So it's been a rough few days for Florida specifically, but it ain't over yet by a long shot.
Our thoughts are with the Sunshine State this evening, so we are going to keep that in mind and be keeping an eye on that through the whole weekend.
But also, don't run a jet ski through a hurricane. Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy. Do
not try to pull
hurricane up.
Do not try to pull a Sharknado move. This is not the time to do that.
There were sharks swimming down Fifth Avenue in Fort Myers.
There were.
I saw this.
Florida. So this is probably the most Floridian hurricane I've seen since Hurricane Charlie.
No doubt. It's been a crazy week. It has been a crazy week. But folks, we as always here at the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast will be talking some wrestling action tonight. It's been an interesting week. Not the craziest week, which honestly is kind of a relief because Lord knows we have had so much news over the past couple months of just a nonstop hectic news cycle. This week's kind of quiet for once. Of course, there's always drama and stuff to get into, but there isn't like the big overarching drama that's just been like churning for days on end this week, which when I got up this morning, I was like, okay, we got some space on the show tonight to get into some different stuff. But if there was anything in my mind that would be, I guess, the biggest topic of the day, it seems, or at least for the last 24 hours. We talked last week on the show about the arrival of Saraya. I think that's how she's pronouncing it, as we heard it multiple times last night on AEW Dynamite. But Saraya, the former Paige, showing up in AEW last week. We had the big question, first and foremost, what's she here to do? Is she going to be able to wrestle? Is she just going to be a talking head? Is she going to be like a GM or something? Is she replacing Brandy Rhodes in the ecosystem of AEW or something as far as their women's division go? And we finally got some light shed on things last night with her first promo, which has definitely caught a lot of people's attention for a number of different reasons, whether it be content or delivery or what was said or what wasn't said. But an interesting promo last night that went on for quite a while. We talk about the women needing more time in AEW. Well, they got about 20 minutes last night between the promo and then the ensuing lumberjack match between Toni Storm and Serena Deeb. So a big chunk of time for the ladies. But the first thing that jumped out at me is it felt like a very WWE presentation with here's the promo leads to the match. We're bringing out all these other ladies to surround the ring, and we're suddenly doing a lumberjack match really for no reason other than just to get some people on the show. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a very just kind of thrown together feeling, at least from where I was sitting. But I don't know, before we dig in any further into this, Damien, let's go to you first. So we were checking out the promo some before we went on air. So thoughts on what you saw of Saraya last night.
So I'm going to take probably a different perspective than what you two might. So forgive me for kind of veering a little bit off of wrestling. So in broadcasting, you do a shot sheet, you do a topic tree, and you go down the line of things you want to hit in your monologue or things you want to discuss in your, let's say, your segment. And sometimes you just blow through your segment as fast as you can without any kind of like follow-ups, no backup plans in your bullet points. And I've done that on air before where I've had to kind of just bloviate to try to fill time because I blew through my talking points within like a minute and a half of a 10-minute segment. That is what she did, according to like what I looked at when I talked to you guys and listened to it back. I feel as if she blew her segment within the first 2 minutes. This is my house. I'm back. Revolution for change. Pretty much everything she did or said back in the NXT Paige days or the WWE Anti-Diva days. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is just, I got the feeling that she just lost her trace and just figured, what else am I going to talk about? Because everybody knows the women's division is kind of lackluster. She's a name. She may not be an in-ring name, but she's a more famous name than some of the ex-WWE superstars they have in AEW. But aside from her usual hits, like I said, This Is My House, Revolution, yada, 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 what else are you going to do? Like, she kind of vaguely talked about in-ring returning. She's being very coy on social media about what her actual role is, which leads me to believe they haven't fully ironed this out yet. They're still in the midst of trying to figure it out, trying to piece it together. Maybe she's still getting tests done by doctors. I'm not going to try to do the over speculation game, but what's the point? Aside from being probably the most famous person on the women's roster right now in name recognition, if you just say formerly known as Paige. So that's pretty much what I'm getting from it. It was pretty useless to have her with a lumberjill match, like you said, Will. So I just think it was just to pop the crowd. And Tony has a really bad problem. We've talked about this ad nauseum. He lives for the pop, the 1 week, 2 week pop of surprise. And look what we have, like the Will Smith meme. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, Toni Storm, Ruby Riott, to name a couple, nothing. Crickets or met with meh. So how much longer are we going to have to deal with Saraya if she doesn't have a defined role? And I think the next maybe week or so or 2 weeks should be a really telltale sign as to where we're going with her, or else she's just going to be the new shiny object that we lose interest in or the fans lose interest in like the next 2 weeks.
So here's where I don't care.
We need a t-shirt that says that, by the way.
You have Saraya there and good on her for getting back, into the ring in a prominent way. I'm not going to piggyback on all the points that Damien just made, but a lot of them are going to echo because it's not the talent, it's the time. Mm-hmm. I'm not convinced that I should invest my time in the women's division if they're not given the time to nurture it. So if that's kind of the unfortunate bit about it, is that you have all of these different moving parts but they're still being force fed through one or two outlets. And that outlet is usually Dr. Britt Baker. She's a dentist, don't you know?
Mhm.
And probably Jade. Now, I'm not saying that shouldn't be a thing in the sense that these two women aren't up for the challenge and up for the task of being the driving forces of the women's division. But considering what it is, the women's division is bigger than two women. Like, full stop. And it never really gets a chance to feel that way because everything gets compartmentalized into a feud with Britt or a feud with Jade. And that's unfortunate. And now that you have Saraya in there in a capacity that nobody's really sure about, she's not exactly out there getting physical with anybody. She's not exactly a general manager because that position doesn't exist. She's sort of in this limbo, and we don't know why, and she's not really addressing it. And I didn't, full disclosure, I didn't watch Dynamite yesterday because, playoff baseball is kind of a thing that's happening. But it is more to the point of how many segments did the women get? Was it their usual one match, 2 segments? Will that lead into Rampage? Are they sprinkling the seeds for Saraya's in-ring return? Probably at Full Gear if they're smart. It doesn't. I'm not hearing that that's the case. I'm hearing that it's more of Saraya did a thing. She definitely had the training wheels taken off as far as cutting a live promo, because if you are used to being scripted down to the letter, down to the inflection, down to the muscle memory, and they say, hey, you got 8 minutes, go out there and talk it. That's not the same thing. Reading the news and speaking the news are not the same thing. Talking to me and speaking to me are not the same thing. And Saraya may be a good talker, but is she a public speaker? That's going to take some time to get used to, as we've seen in AEW. There are guys that can talk and there are guys that can speak. So here we are. We're still left with the same questions and answers that we were before when she debuted in New York, and going into the show this weekend, next week in Washington. We'll be there. And it's kind of like, well, let's see how this goes. Now, of course, there's a honeymoon period with everything, and I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. But unfortunately, like Ruby Soho, Athena, Toni Storm, Rosa, yes, is injured, but even her, she was kind of spinning her wheels before she left. It's kind of like, well, it just all boils down to Britt and Jade again. And, that's really unfortunate. I really do hope that if they're going to bring Madison Rayne in to be the head coach, hopefully that includes promo skills. Because if Saraya needed a refresher, then her coach should have recognized that and cut her off at the pass and said, this is what we're going to work on. So I don't know. I don't know if this was a trial run. Saraya did get on the Twitter and say, hey, I'm a bit rusty, work with me. No, we're building promos.
This is professional wrestling. No,
Yeah.
we don't work with you.
No, you are supposed to give us, there are no oopsies. If
live TV is live TV.
Yeah. I mean, if you go to a restaurant and the chef is like, damn, I forgot to add butter. Let me, no.
I'll get you next time.
No, there is no next week. You goofed. You're supposed to have these things buttoned up before you go out there. So, with that said, I'm willing to cut her some slack, but I just hope that it doesn't go down the same 4-week push and then, a couple warm-up matches on Elevation and then mad scramble to the pay-per-view. Now, the pay-per-view is November 19th, I believe, which is a little bit more, around 6 weeks away. Are they building towards that now? And it doesn't really feel like they are. So it'll be an interesting bit of wait and see. I really hope that she gets back into the ring. I think that she still has a lot to prove. I know personally, I felt that Daniel Bryan had a lot to prove before he became Bryan Danielson again. We just don't know what her injury, even though others have similar injuries to her, we don't know how she's going to react in the ring, in a high profile spot. If she's that nervous on the mic, will she be that nervous when the bell rings? So I think that there's still a lot to show and prove with Saraya, with obviously the women's division, but it doesn't really amount to a hill of beans if they're only given 8 minutes a week to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, the part that jumped out at me was she dropped the line about, I'm here to start a revolution. And she alluded to how she had done that before. And it brought back the flashbacks to me of when they called up Sasha and Charlotte and Becky all in one segment on Raw. And it was like, they're kind of running this back, except they're not bringing in new faces except for her. But it's the same idea of like, we're going to change things and things are going to be different now, which is interesting because it almost came across like without outright saying it. You have AEW being like, everything y'all been saying that the women's division isn't any good. Well, here's Paige kind of alluding to that publicly on TV that the women's division needs help. So it was kind of like, man, they're kind of throwing all of the work that's been done under the bus in a way, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand what you're saying, but I also I don't think that's an apples to apples comparison, and it's largely because it's never been an issue of talent; it's been an issue of time. So I don't care who you are or what you do, what you build, unless unless somebody is hideously popular for no reason whatsoever and can just go out there and command a crowd when the bell rings. I think a lot of people nowadays are used to the WWE style of North American wrestling, and that culture is build up, build up, build up, build up, build up, go home show, pay-per-view, build up, build up, build up, build up, build up. And pay-per-views used to be once every 5 weeks. And AEW is once every 4 months-ish. So with all of that time to build, we still don't have anything built. So it's kind of, she may say, I'm starting the revolution. What the hell do you think the company is called? Their pay-per-view is literally called Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that seems a bit of an oxymoron right there. But if you're starting a revolution, how? Rio,
right, in what form?
Yeah, Rio was the first champion, and Nyla Rose took it from her. Not a pasty white girl from England. Now, we've seen that story before. But we haven't seen Rio, who hasn't been back since, and he's kicking ass in Japan. We haven't seen, Rio or Shida or a lot of the people that, started the women's revolution in AEW. But somehow it reverts back to Saraya.
Yeah, that's the part that just, it didn't click. Because like we were saying, it's like when WWE did that stuff, and they brought in all those women from NXT, the whole idea is like, okay, here is the new generation getting called up, getting brought in.
Yeah.
And last night there weren't any new faces other than Saraya. So it's like, okay, what revolution? And you're not even alluding, if you're going to be a one-woman revolution, you're not even alluding to that you're going to be able to wrestle. So what exactly are you changing, and in what form? You're saying this, but where's the meat and potatoes of what exactly is going on here?
Yeah, she's not exactly saving us from the give divas a chance era of AEW.
Right, exactly.
Like we know what the issue is. It's time. Give the ladies 8 to 10 minutes to work.
Right.
I don't care where they do it. If they need to make Elevation an actual thing and tie it in with the storylines just to give women a chance to work, then so be it. But the bottom line is that they need to flesh out these storylines better instead of scrambling to the pay-per-view at the last minute. I mean, I don't. Now, whether you like them or not is a matter of personal preference. If you look at Britt Baker and go, no, this doesn't work for me. Okay, cool. If you look at Abaddon and go, no. But I don't think that there's anyone that's like objectively bad, like a danger to themselves and others. I think that there are those whose styles mesh with my sensibilities and those that do and don't better than others. But to say that, like, no, this person should not be in a ring. I can't name one. I don't think this is a person that's that bad.
No, and even this week, I don't know if it was on Elevation or Dark, but Penelope Ford, and Sky Blue, were part of the mixed tag match, and it was really good wrestling in general. With that,
it was on Elevation for Grand Slam, and that was a solid match.
Yeah,
it was a solid 8-minute match.
So maybe there is something to what you're saying about just give them 8 minutes, wrestling 2 times, maybe 3 times a show, We don't need to see 4 Dark Order segments anymore. You know, we don't need to see a lot of the flotsam and jetsam of it all. What do you have to lose by giving, let's say, Athena versus Jamie Hayter? I've never seen that match. I would like to see that match. You know, or to your point, Jamal, just give me some other storylines aside from Jade being Goldberg. Something else other than the baddie showing up looking menacing and then Jade saying, cut the shit. Like, that's all I'm getting. And you both know I love women's wrestling. I'm a women's wrestling aficionado. I love it. And I'm not getting what I need from it. I'm not getting the action. I'm not getting enough in-ring portions of it all. And if you're just going to give me a substandard lumberjill match, this ain't it, Chief. This ain't
Damian, I'm glad you mentioned a name there because it reminded me that there were 2 people in that segment that the crowd in Philadelphia was reacting to more than anybody else. And it was Jamie Hayter and Willow Nightingale, which sent to me, it was a clear message that, look, the new faces we want are right here in front of everybody. And Lord knows she's been getting, a reaction for a while now. And for whatever reason, they seem to be they were building up to her and, Britt, and then they decide, nope, we're not doing that. And it's like, I don't think that move was the right move because clearly people were getting behind her and then they pulled the plug on it.
Jamie's on the Wardlow path and that's a slow-ish burn. I hope it doesn't take 2 years, but Jamie's definitely on the Wardlow path and I don't mind it. As far as Willow Nightingale in Philadelphia, well, that crowd knows who she is. Now, if they were in New Mexico and she got that reaction, I would feel differently about it. But Philly knows who Willow is, and as they should, as everyone should, because Willow's awesome. But with that said, you have, and that's another problem, is that they have people like Willow, like Trisha Dora, who's going to be on Elevation this coming week, and then they have them put on these matches, and they involve them in things, and they're kind of like just accessories, but they're not really in. There's Kylan King is another one who's like halfway in, halfway out, and it's just like, well, are they in or are they out? Like what are we doing here? And then, of course, Ring of Honor, where does that factor in? It's just a lot of moving parts for it all to come down to Britt's talking shit again. Jade's, 38-0, which by itself can be fine, but there has to be more to it to build upon all of those things. And if you're not going to give us the sizzle of, the high concept promo work, then give them time to wrestle. Personally, I prefer the wrestling. That's why I watch the show, a wrestling show for the wrestling. Ring the damn bell. But if you're not going to give us time to build these storylines, then give me 10 minutes in a good match. I'll take either or.
We're at the point now they have to give them more time. Otherwise, it's just going to remain an afterthought, like it's been. And if the time isn't going to be invested, I don't see how this grows in any way past where it's been stagnating for like so long now.
Well, ironically, hindsight being what it is, maybe Paige is right. Maybe this is not necessarily give divas a chance, but give women a chance in general. Because that's what we're really talking about here. We don't need them to reinvent the wheel. We just need them to go to work. Give women a chance. And I'm not
more than one segment
on the show.
Just more than one segment. That's it.
Yeah. That would 100% their feminine output. If they gave them one extra segment, one extra match, would literally double their output on Dynamite. I mean, you can't.
It's all it has to come down to is give them one segment an hour. That's it. 2-hour show, one in the first hour, one in the second hour. Is that really too much to ask? Apparently it is.
Or is it one of these things where they can only focus on 1 or 2 women at a time, where if it doesn't go according to plan, for instance, Chris Statlander, where apparently she was the one being groomed to take the title off of Jade, allegedly. So then she blew her knee out again. So it's like, oh crap, now we got to pivot. And then we lost Red Velvet from the baddies. And then Layla Gray popped up out of nowhere with Stokely Hathaway, who no longer manages Jade Cargill. There's not enough focus. I don't even mean just give me more matches. There's no cohesive focus in terms of the women's division. And I think above all else, maybe you should have a women's wrestler not named Madison Rayne, kind of being an agent for women's wrestling backstage. I know she's a coach and all that. That's great. But I even forgot she got hired, because for me, the most obvious choice to teach these women how to work a great 8 to 10 minute match is already on the roster. Her name's Serena Deeb. Let her teach these girls how to go.
But see, that's also the thing too, though. I think I 100% agree with everything that you're saying, but also, not my opinion, but this is the sentiment of a lot of the mouth breathers that we see online, is that Serena Deeb has the personality of a soggy box of Cheerios. And that's unfortunate. But that's why I say either or. If you're not going to give us a high concept promo that Britt usually does, Britt is much better promo than she is a worker, than she is a wrestler.
Without question.
Deeb is a much better wrestler than she is a promo. But the thing I think that is the biggest thing in the back is, when Cody was there, we knew what the driving force behind whatever he was doing. And if he brought people with him, like QT, like Sammy, and whatever, then that's what it was. But he was able to drive that ship and steer it and flesh it out from beginning to end, for better or worse. The Bucks and Kenny were able to do a similar thing when they were doing the Impact thing, when the Bucks were doing their thing with Adam Page. They were still able to drive that boat and tug along anybody they had with them. There is no one with that level of influence for the women. I don't know who that person should be backstage. They have a lot of great talent, obviously. They have a lot of great coaches, obviously. But there's no one that can translate the brainstorming session to the front of the screen. And unfortunately, that's why, to your point, things seem so disjointed. Who is that person that is saying this is where the women are going? Who's driving that boat? It seems rudderless. And I think until that person comes forward, I can understand why Khan is reluctant to play that hand, because he's trying to sell a show.
Right.
Warner Brothers is going to do whatever they're going to do. And they have an issue with their stockholders, so that's a different problem. But he's still trying to sell a show, and he's trying to sell it, maybe not to us. He's definitely trying to sell it to you, Damien, but he's trying to sell it to Middle America. Now, they are the ones that are, it's a numbers game. So he's trying to sell it to, middle-class white folks living in Kansas. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So that may not involve a lot of the women unless you give them the chance to go work. So again, talking in circles now, the point is still the point. And that if Saraya doesn't absolutely come through with whatever star power we think she has, and be that person in front of the camera and behind the camera to drive the women forward, then at least I get to see her in elevation.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at. We just got to see if they have any kind of plan for this in the next couple of weeks, and where they go from here. Because I think the other thing we're kind of forgetting about is we're still in the land of interim women's champion, even though we have not heard Thunder Rosa mentioned in like ages now, since pretty much that whole thing happened.
Yeah, since she left, actually.
Yeah, so I don't know. I was almost thinking maybe last night they were going to be like, you know what, Tony, you are the women's champion, and they were just going to sweep that under the rug, but they didn't go that far. But folks, we'll see. Stay tuned, as we often say on this show. We have to stay tuned on this one as far as what happens with the never-ending saga of the AEW women's division. But at this point, folks, it is going to be halftime. We are going to take our commercial break, and then when we come back, it will be the Indie Spotlight. And then after that, there are QR codes and a mystery afoot in World Wrestling Entertainment. So we will talk about this entire White Rabbit situation along with some other stuff in the second half of our show. Thanks for joining us tonight, folks. We will be back in the second half right after this.
Big Gold Belt Media is your golden standard for all of your media needs. Visit biggoldbelt.com for pro wrestling info, movies, comics, and even more digital content. On all of your social medias, follow us at Big Gold Belt all across the board. Listen to this show and more on your SoundCloud or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for joining us, folks. Another fine Thursday night with your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast. And when it's halftime on the show, we always like to take a look at the indies. So Jamal is here with our Big Gold Belt Indie Wrestling Spotlight of the week.
Yep. So this week we're going a place that I've actually been, love this town, Anchorage, Alaska.
Whoa.
That's right.
Okay.
Anchorage, Alaska, WrestlePro Alaska is having a show this coming Saturday night, live from Anchorage at the Egan Center downtown. That's the Anchorage Convention Center. That's 555 Fifth Avenue, West Fifth Avenue in downtown Anchorage. If you've been to Anchorage, if you know, it's a really cool place. It's going to be dark as hell up there because sunset's like 2:00, this time of year. But WrestlePro Alaska back with a bang. Emphasis on the bang because DDP is going to make an appearance.
Oh damn!
Right, they got his ass out to Alaska. That's more than enough for me. You can actually pre-order your meet and greet packages at WrestlePro at WrestleProAlaska.com/tickets. Buff Bagwell is working a match out there, which
Okay.
I mean,
WCW reunion.
Yeah, I mean, good on him. I had no idea. Sunny Kiss is going to be in action. Tennille Dashwood, you may know her as Emma, is going to be out there. She's facing Freya the Slayer, who is actually a pretty solid, worker from Alaska. But yeah, that should be a fun match. Jay Lethal's in there in the conversation. Scotty Two Hotties, working. I mean, that's the damnedest thing. The Acclaimed from AEW versus Orange Cassidy and Leon St. Giovanni, LSG, for those you know. WrestlePro Alaska, back with a bang. This coming Saturday, October 1st. The meet and greet starts at 5 p.m. Bell time's at 7. And if you want to watch it on Fight, it's $14.99 Fight TV. Go ahead and you can order that. Reserve that right now. 2 days, 2 hours and 25 minutes ish from right now. 11 p.m. Eastern, which is 7 p.m. local time out there in Alaska. 8 p.m. on the West Coast. $14.99 on Fight, or in person at WrestleProAlaska.com/tickets at the Egan Center, 555 West 5th Avenue, and right there in downtown Anchorage, Alaska. If you go to Snow City Cafe, get the Reindeer Benedict. Tell them I said thank you. Look, don't do that, Damien. It's Alaska.
I need to know what's in this Reindeer Benedict, sir.
Don't worry about that. You're not going to Alaska. But
not yet.
But yeah, I mean, I really wish I can go. WrestlePro Alaska's, that's a hell of a card, and I might have to make a trip out there. But yeah, that's this coming Saturday, October 1st in Anchorage, back with a bang because DDP is going to be there for WrestlePro Alaska, and that's the indie spotlight for this week.
There you go. Indie wrestling in Alaska. See, indie wrestling can thrive anywhere.
Anywhere.
That is proof. If it can be all the way up in Alaska, that tells you something right there. So,
yeah, like WrestlePro is actually doing a show Friday night in Palmer, Alaska, which is a suburb of Anchorage, about 40 miles away. But the big show is going to be in downtown Anchorage this weekend. But yeah, that's
very cool.
That's a show. That's a show and a half right there.
Very neat. Very neat. We cover all corners of the globe here on the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. So,
and just for the audience really quick, I'm looking up Reindeer Benedict ingredients here, and apparently there is no actual reindeer. So maybe no reindeer was harmed in the making of this food. It's actually corned beef.
Who knows what they get away with up there? That's way up in the cold white north. So we'll see. But in other news, other mysteries, I guess. If the Reindeer Benedict's a mystery, we definitely have other mysteries going on in wrestling. This is a heck of a segue we can use right here from an omelet to mysteries with QR codes, mysteries with a rabbit that involve a small animal. So it's been how many weeks now? Maybe 2 weeks?
No, longer than that. It's been at least about 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
Maybe. Like that, because I think the first thing that happened was them playing the music at the house shows. They started playing White Rabbit at house shows. What we're talking about, folks, is the mystery afoot in WWE, and I guess
the mystery afoot really will.
I don't know, man. I'm trying to figure out how to describe this thing. The whole let's see here. It's a social media mystery. It's got, multimedia effects to it because you got codes you can scan and videos on your phone and music in the arenas. And they're covering out a lot of different angles here with this. But I guess the big question is, because Lord knows this has captured people's attention. the White Rabbit, as they're calling it. What is the White Rabbit? Who is the White Rabbit? Should we already know who the White Rabbit is? I think it's also part of the question, too, because SmackDown got a monster rating last week when people thought the White Rabbit would appear on SmackDown. But that did not happen because one of the clues was 9/23, which people took as September 23rd. That was the night of SmackDown. But I'm curious about this thing. I think they've stumbled upon an interesting little creative concept here. Tons of people seem to think it's pointing to the former Bray Wyatt, which I guess seems to be the safe, easy bet. But I mean, who knows? There's been nothing. I would say there's been nothing definitive that really means it has to be him at this point. Really, there's definitely hints, but at this point, it could really be anything. It could really be anything. People want it to be Bray Wyatt, but that doesn't mean it necessarily has to be. But I guess what I'm thinking right now, first question, how much longer can they stretch this out? Do they need to wrap it up? Because I know damn well, like there was the talk last week that Friday was going to be it. And then SmackDown popped a huge rating, so they had people's attention. And then Monday came for the next clue on Raw, and Monday wasn't as hot, but of course Monday was up against Monday Night Football. So, of course, Monday's not going to be what it has been the past couple weeks. But how much longer can they do this? And then I guess the other question for the group, where should this lead? What should the White Rabbit lead? Or what would you like to see the White Rabbit lead to? This in the world of WWE, where it could really be anything. It could truly be anything, I guess, in the world of sports entertainment. So, Damian, let's go to you first.
I think they got one more week. And the reason why I say that, because this is going down, if this continues, this goes down the line of the anonymous Raw GM, the SmackDown hacker that was revealed to be Ali, GTV, if you remember that from years ago.
I was going to say, what about Glacier? What about Blood Runs Cold?
Blood Runs Cold when we had 13 weeks for a Mortal Kombat ripoff. So they need to pull the trigger on this really soon, or else we're going to have a gobbledygooker situation by the time we get to November. And I'm hoping that's actually the way they go, just to troll everybody. I'm really hoping it's the bunny from the Adam Rose group, just because. So that would be interesting. Gives Titus O'Neil something to do besides charity work. But it's all signs point to Bray, and I feel now that since everybody thinks it's Bray, it shouldn't be Bray, just for the sake of swerving the audience, for the dirt sheets, for the gotcha moments. Because right now, I don't want to borrow Jamal's line, but here's why I don't care.
Okay, that's just rude.
It's not
gimmick infringement.
It's not going to get me to tune in. You know, this whole continuous joke about rabbits and playing, Jefferson Airplane, which is a great song, by the way. But what's it going to amount to? Is it a faction? Is it, a new wrestler? Is it something completely different? Is it tout? Because now they're using QR codes. They moved on from tout. So we don't really know what this is. I give them credit for being sneaky of putting the QR codes in places you don't expect it to be. I like just putting it random haphazardly. But aside from what it leads to, if it's Bray Wyatt, meh. And I'm a big Bray supporter. I've always liked his mind for the business more so than his in-ring work. But if it's anybody else, I'd be intrigued to see what the swerve would have been. Because if it would have been, and we might talk about him later, if it would have been Malakai Black, I would have probably said, okay, I'm good with that. Because it fits the motif almost, the mysterious motif. But who it is now, I don't really care.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that if it ain't Bray Wyatt, there isn't, and even if it is Bray Wyatt, because I'm not a fan of his, there really isn't anybody out there within reason that would make me want to see whoever it is. Because whoever it is means that they've probably left DDT, which would make me sadder. So I'm kind of, it's whatever. Even if it was, Malakai Black, so what? Even if it was Buddy Murphy, so what? So it's kind of like, whatever. But then again, it made me think, well, Survivor Series is the next big pay-per-view, but they actually have one coming up next week in Philadelphia, and that's Extreme Rules.
Really good one. Mm-hmm.
So, if they do decide to wrap this up, they do have a week to make it work. SmackDown's tomorrow, and then the next show is the go home show for Extreme Rules, which is just after. I don't know if there's a Saudi show in October. I feel that there is.
November.
Okay.
Early November.
So then if they don't do Extreme Rules, which is October 8th, then they have 4 weeks to do a thing in early November if they decide to fly Bunny Man out there to the kingdom. Either way, it's kind of like, well, I could be intrigued, but there's nobody out there really making me think that, there's somebody worth seeing. So I it's not that I don't care because I wasn't watching anyway. But with all this White Rabbit stuff, I will give them credit. Next to the Chase U hoodie, which may be on the way already, I do like the shirt. Now, personally, and the rugby fans will know, I'm a Rabbitohs fan. So when I see a big angry bunny on a jersey, I'm already bought in because that's my team. So even though they lost, God damn it, and I'm going to miss the finals, but still, go Rabbits. Otherwise, it's kind of, you sure? I guess, feed your head, great song, but ruined by the Justice League, Suicide Squad, but sure, I guess. I don't know how long they expect me to pay attention to it without going, we either going to eat this bunny or we're going to put his ass on TV. Either way, I got to catch up. So let me know.
Yeah. I think hearing the schedule just now, I think next week is it. I think Extreme Rules, has to be the ultimate deadline. If it don't happen by Extreme Rules, then they're stretching this too far. I think they got to reveal what the hell the deal is by then. Now, like we've been saying, all signs point to Bray. And all I care about with that, because Lord knows I'm not a Bray Wyatt fan as far as his wrestling goes. Dude's creative as hell. Mm-hmm. My only care would be this. If he's coming back and this is him, I don't want to see that damn Fiend no more. I don't need no hocus pocus. Please let this be some reinvention that's more down to earth, where we don't have damn red lights and spooky stuff and all that. So that's my biggest concern there. If this is going to be the Fiend 2.0 and he's going to pull a bunny out of a hat or some crap, like, you lost me right there. So
maybe that's the gimmick now. Well, he's a magician. He's just going to pull bunnies out of his hat now.
Evil magician, it wouldn't shock me. It would not shock me. So I don't know. That's just throwing that out there. Malakai Black, the rumors we had earlier this week about him that we'll get into in our next segment, that would have been really interesting. And who knows? Maybe it could get. I don't assume anything is definite till we see, because Lawrence, we ain't seen him on TV. We haven't seen him anywhere, so I'm not going to rule anything completely out, regardless of what the rumors on the street may be. But that would be interesting. But yeah, other than those two names, there's nothing out there that really jumps out at me as like, oh my God, this has got to be what it is, and this would deliver on something they're investing this much time in. I mean, my guess is okay.
Here, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about WWE and all their efforts to expand into different genres of things, like movies, social media. What if it's some sort of like product? What if I kept thinking for some reason tequila. I don't know why that came to my mind, but what if it's some sort of WWE inspired beverage or food product, or just a movie with WWE films where we have another horror movie called The White Rabbit, where Bray Wyatt is the horror villain of this movie, like Kane with See No Evil. Like, as you were talking, I'm like, why does it have to be just condensed to wrestling? What if WWE is trying to do this as another product extension to get people to like interested in something else? So who knows? Halloween's coming up.
It's not outside the realm of possibility. It's absolutely not. Especially like how they had Kane and See No Evil. So
honestly, a movie would be a lot more interesting than just a regular debut. I don't know who or whatever that movie needs to be, but this is that time. The spooky movies are coming out, and they have until basically the end of the month to pump them all out. So this could be like the first thing, and they're already selling White Rabbit merch, and they have a couple shirts on the shop, and maybe it does turn into some kind of spooky movie for the end of the month. I don't hate that. I think a lot of people will be let down because they booked themselves to a corner, but That's what you did.
But what if that's the case? If that stays the way it is, like we're talking about, Bray Wyatt has been rumored to be working with Hollywood on horror scripts, and as being like a horror movie extra.
Yeah.
Who's to say Wyndham Rotunda doesn't come back as a horror villain, and that's still bringing back Bray Wyatt in a different capacity? It's still truthful about Bray Wyatt, and it's something spooky, like we said, spooky season. So. It makes sense on something non-wrestling related, not in-ring related.
Right. I don't hate it. I don't hate it as an idea. It'd be an interesting tie-in as a way to reintroduce a character, but have it tied into a bigger picture that's not just wrestling. So,
I mean, we got a Winnie the Pooh horror movie coming out, so
it's that
can't
time
get much
of year,
worse than that.
Now you got me thinking. So who knows?
Bray Wyatt and here. David Otunga in Right Rabbit.
This ain't your mama's Alice.
Oh no.
Oh Lord. Well, folks,
God.
We will
it's
see.
Bray Wyatt and the Miz and Otunga. Oh God.
And he's the Mad Hatter. Oh no.
I stand
See, now
by
we're just gonna do a casting.
Week.
Sorry, Will. Keep going.
Yeah, nah. I said, well, we'll see where we are by next week's show. This next week's show will be right before Extreme Rules, but my guess is by Extreme Rules, we know what the deal is, one way or another. That's my guess. I can't see it going longer than that because the momentum, I think, is already kind of peaked, and now it's slowly coming down the other side. So we will see. So,
by the way, before we move on to the Malakai Black potentially, can we briefly discuss the Extreme Rules card and the way that it's being shaped up as opposed to past years? Because I'm getting the sense now that everything is a gimmick match. Like I'm looking at the card now. Liv versus Ronda, Extreme Rules match. Riddle versus Seth, Fight Pit. McIntyre versus Cross, strap match. Bianca and Bayley, ladder match. Edge and Finn, I Quit match. And the Brutes versus Imperium in an old-fashioned Donnybrook match.
Yeah.
So Papa H is booking Extreme Rules as throwing all the gimmicks in one pay-per-view and seeing if it sticks. And I'm good with that. I'm actually good with that.
If it's a show called Extreme Rules, yes, load it up on the gimmicks.
Especially if you're not going to have Roman on the show. This is a good way to get people to buy into the show because you're going to then no one knows what a Donnybrook match is or a fight. Then no one's really seen what a Fight Pit match is.
Nobody knows what a Donnybrook match is. You're probably under 75.
Truth.
No, but to your point though, it's not that Extreme Rules means that it has to be, barbed wire death matches. It just means that the rules have to be extreme. And for a normal match, a strap match would be extreme. An I Quit match usually is extreme. So it's just these are the extremes of wrestling rules. So I actually think that it's a different connotation that, people went, extreme, Philadelphia, Wells Fargo Center, somebody's getting thrown off a scaffold. Well, no. But if we know what a normal singles match looks like or normal tag match looks like, the fact that a Donnybrook match is going to happen is far from the norm of what a traditional wrestling match is going to be. This ain't your mama's pay-per-view. I don't mind that. I think obviously they started to lean on the extreme of what we think violence is. Right. When no, it's literally Extreme Rules. I mean, I think you don't have to overthink it. It's an Extreme Rules match for the pay-per-view. It's just no DQ. That's actually extreme. So I'll give them credit for that and think that it's a for 6 matches and also 6 matches too. That's a good number. I don't know if they're going to add to the pre-show or anything like that, but 6 matches on the main card is a solid number. Get them in and out in under 3 hours.
Yeah,
I'm good with
absolutely. It. Yeah, for what that show has been in recent years, I like the idea of just every match on the show has some sort of twist to it, some extra spice. So now we'll see what they do. But yeah, for Extreme Rules, I'm definitely more interested than I have been in recent years. That's for sure. All right. So we've alluded to it all night. So our final topic as we wrap things up is Malakai Black went put out a statement this week. So there's been a lot of rumors swirling around him and what his status is and how he's doing. He's clearly hasn't been wrestling in recent times and has clearly been off the road. And he put out a statement, kind of trying to clear the air, because there was a lot of talk in the last week or so that he had a conditional release, is what was being reported by pretty much like every source out there. All the big ones were all like, pretty much in agreement on it, that he had gotten a conditional release and, he was going to be out of AEW and that was that. And he came online Monday morning and was like, no, none of this is going on. I need a break. And I don't appreciate people putting all this out there and speculating, and none of this is the case, and y'all don't even know what my contract is, and which we'll get into, which is a whole little detail in of itself that's kind of interesting. But he's got a lot going on, apparently, including death threats that were coming his way due to all this drama, because people are just, can't handle people possibly switching companies or not appearing on TV. Who knows where exactly that comes from. But in the midst of all this, the talk after this came down was that the hammer came down from Tony Khan, and all this talk about people being unhappy and wanting out of AEW, that none of that's going to happen, and there aren't going to be any releases. And your people are staying put, and that's how it's going to be, and we're moving forward with the situation as it is. So I guess the first thing is this whole Malakai Black situation and all these rumors surrounding him. I guess the part that I'm really curious about is it seemed a week ago we were sitting here and it seemed pretty much definite that everyone was like, oh no, he's gone. He got out. And just like on a dime, it's like, nope, no, he didn't. But goddamn, if everyone in the free world seemed to think he was free and clear with what they were calling a conditional release. I remember we were talking about, probably it must have meant there was going to have to be like, a 90-day no compete or something in it, but they're saying he's going nowhere. And then I guess nobody's going anywhere. So it's one comparison I heard is does this make AEW a prison like we've always heard about WWE if people want out and Tony's holding them to their deal?
Well,
but I guess
AEW, it's the contract that makes it a prison.
Right.
It's the contract that you sign that you're the one that attaches the ball and chain to your ankle and are forced to work the terms of the contract. That just is what it is.
Regardless of company.
Yeah. Like, I don't understand what the difference is. I do think, though, people, decided to be Inspector Clouseau, and like, well, people are saying that AEW's unhappy. The CM Punk thing happens. The MJF thing happened back in June. And then you have guys that are, these high concept guys are being wasted on TV because they're not really doing much. So these are the things that we see. And then they put in two and two together, and they get 9. And they're like, wait a minute, how did you do that? The problem is that, well, Malakai said that he was hurt. He has a back issue. So that's why you didn't see him on TV over most of the summer. And then he said, well, no, I need to take a mental health break because, so there are certain things more important than his career. And that's obviously his marriage and his cats. So number one, he doesn't owe us any goddamn thing. If he wants to take a break, cool. If he wants to open up an ice cream truck, cool. It doesn't, that's on him. He still has his life to live outside of, work. And I think a lot of people are putting too much undue pressure on themselves to know everything, and that's not how it works. Buddy Murphy, same thing too. People forget that he's Australian. He may not be an actual citizen of anywhere but Australia and may have to report back for legal reasons to make sure his visa's straight. That may have to happen every 6 months, year, 18 months, 2 years, whatever it is. But he may have to go back for a month to figure it out. And of course things change because he's not a citizen. So Trump could have changed something that Biden changed back that screws him over for the time being until he gets his paperwork right. I'm not saying anything is true, but I'm just saying that these are the factors that people don't consider outside of he's not doing well on TV, so he must be doing bad, so he must be unhappy. And look what happened in NXT, and look at what happened in WWE because Triple H is, paving the golden road back to Oz. So naturally, everybody should just burn their contracts that they've signed and then try to sign a different contract with WWE. No, that's dumb. That's not how that works at all. Because when it comes down to the money, you've negotiated this contract to get what you wanted. And now you suddenly throw that away because the grass may be greener in WWE. Well, what happened to what you wanted? Because if that's the case, it's not about the money anymore. It's just about clout or brand loyalty or whatever. That's also not true either, because the rent is due October 1st. The mortgage is due October 1st. So whatever you think your favorite athlete is doing anywhere, wherever it is, he's not leaving to mess up the money, because October 1st is in 2 days. So come Monday morning, business hours, the rent, the mortgage better be in the mail. I think people are a little bit short-sighted on that issue because they don't pay bills.
This is true. We've discussed this plenty of times. It's like these, no matter the wrestler, no matter what you do in life, if there's a contract involved with your job, you need to know what is in that contract, what the terms are between what the money is, any clauses that are in there, what the duration of it is, because that's the part that got me is in his statement, he made a big deal about people talking about, I have a 5-year deal and no one knows what my contract is. And it's like, well, buddy, your boss put that out there. Your boss did an interview and said you had a 5-year deal. So that part, if you got an issue with that, you need to take that up with him. If you're not aware that your deal is that, or if he misspoke, but people are only saying 5-year deal Malakai Cross because Tony Khan put that out there on Busted Open. So that was the one weird part where I was like, okay, what's the deal there? Maybe he doesn't have a 5-year deal, or maybe he's not aware that he has a 5-year deal. But according to TK, he has a 5-year deal, which sounds really long for someone of his level at this juncture. 3 I could see, 2 I could see, but 5 years for Malakai Black, that I don't know.
I think 5 makes sense considering when he was signed.
Right.
When he was signed, WWE wasn't what it was right now. When he was signed, it was, damn, they have this guy who should be higher than he is, and they're wasting him away in WWE. So I think that they could leverage his star power for what it's worth, but we're going to need to hold on to that for, you're going to have to commit. This isn't you get over here, you make a little bit of a name for yourself, and then you jump ship when the next thing's smoking that's bigger than us.
Right, hop right back.
And I do think that is why they're signing these guys to 3 to 5 year deals, or a 3-year deal with a 2-year option, which is a thing that I've been hearing.
Maybe that's the deal. Maybe that's how it's broken down.
Yeah, but I think it is interesting that people are so hell bent on what Black could or could not do when he literally said, "If it didn't come from me, it didn't happen." Yeah. So wait a minute, people are taking that statement and then running to the dirt sheets to confirm his statement. Stop it. Stop it. Also, more importantly, and I know that we're talking about this because it is something to talk about, but let's be honest here. Does knowing this information raise or marginalize your watching? Does this enhance your the value of the program? Does knowing that Malakai Black has a 3 to 5 year deal make AEW better for you, the viewer at home? For me, it doesn't. I would assume for a lot of people it doesn't. So just watch the show. Like, let's not throw death threats at somebody. Just watch the show.
Well, Jamal, I'm going to say this. Because we always talk about the soap opera of sports, right? We always think about free agency, the offseason, the big story, sometimes more than the game. ESPN covers it, Fox Sports, what have you. So I think now that we get to peek behind the curtain, even though it's through dirt sheets, about maybe what a person's contract is. MJF fighting about his contract on air, talking about the free agency period of 2024. So now wrestling has entered the conversation of professional sports when we talk about contracts, years, overpaid, underpaid, buyouts, So now a lot more people are interested in that businessy aspect, the contract aspect of pro wrestling, more so than just, oh, he signed a 5-year deal. Like, no, like, what does this really do for your product? Is this a game changer, long-term thinking? Can you make money? Because that's what I'm thinking about right now. And if I was going to sign Tommy and Malakai Black, what have you, I think a 2-year +1 would be best suited for him and what he wants to accomplish versus what you thought you were getting. Prime example, when he came in, immediately feuded with the Codester, immediately whooped his ass, then started the House of Black. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we got Brody, we got Buddy, we got Julia Hart, we got something here. But then, like every athlete, because they're human, they have a personal life outside of the sport that they perfect and work with, they need to tend to those things. And how often have wrestling fans said that we need an off season to give wrestlers the time to heal? And especially now, in the wake of Simone Biles, other athletes coming out about mental health being a prime shoot. I could talk about that, how mental health is a big deal now than at any other point in sports history. Why do y'all care? Just let the man live his life. He's got 3 years, 5 years, 4 million, 2 million. Are you seeing any of that money? No. Just let the man live his life, go home to his wife, take care of business, pay the rent, pay the mortgage, like Jamal said. And if he comes back, fine. He'll be hitting Black Mass on Orange Cassidy in no time. If he doesn't, cool. Zelina's got Twitch and cosplay, and he's an MMA fighter.
Well, they have other outlets too. He has a clothing line and all these other things. So if you really want to support, buy his merch.
Right. Like people always say, we're indie wrestlers, right? Support them, buy their merch. If you love him that much, buy his merch. But to Jamal's point, and I'll wrap it up here, fans and the fanatical fans love running to Sean Ross Sapp, love running to What Culture and like tattling or snitch tagging online. But the vast majority of fans who just watch it for the product and who view athletes not as heroes but as people understand that someone like a situation like this isn't that big of a deal. It's only because it's a story, because people are talking about it and it gets clicks and views like sports in general. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I do think that the difference though between actual sports and wrestling is there is a free agency period and it's in the off season. As a Mets fan who is eagerly awaiting what they're going to do in Atlanta this weekend, biggest game, biggest series of the year, I don't know what anybody's contract is. I don't care about free agency. The only thing I care about is continuing
Can
to
the
push
Mets
for
beat the Braves?
Playoffs.
Right.
Can the Mets beat the Braves? Can they sweep the Nationals? 6 games. Let's get it done before next Wednesday. After that's done, then we can talk about free agency. Now, if I were a Pittsburgh fan who's going nowhere, then maybe you do look ahead to go and say, what can we do to retool and things like that? And that's cool. There will always be a conversation, particularly in AEW, with what is that missing piece that they need to get them through that, that next level. They're coasting at 1 million-ish. Even at the Hurricane came through, they were still at 990. And the Weather Channel was the top 9 slots. The Weather Channel and Tucker Carlson, which is baffling, were the top, 8 out of the top 10 slots in the ratings for cable yesterday. There will always be that conversation. That's valid. But when you start to make it personal that this person is like a physical detriment to the product, when realistically, you don't need to know how the sauce is made. You don't at all. And maybe that's because it's more salacious than the actual on-screen product. That's what drives people to it. Like moths to a flame, they come running when they hear something they shouldn't hear. And that's kind of that's what it is, really. It's the idea that, I know a thing that I shouldn't know, and I want to tell it.
Correct.
Because we're all 6-year-old kids on the inside. We just have money to go watch the things that we've been watching since we were 6 years old, which is why I'll be in Toronto in 3 weeks. So
and it's a lot different now than when we were kids, when we had to dial the hotline and listen to Mean Gene for any of the scoops and stuff.
It was worse because number one, the hotline was a 900 number, so you definitely had to pay for that.
$4 a minute.
If you found a local hotline, and I don't know if he's still doing it, but shout out to Don Tony DeBlasi out of Brooklyn. I used to call this hotline as a kid, long distance. when that was a thing. And luckily because his thing was a minute long, and I was able to get in for $258, and it was much better than calling Gene Okerlund for like $10 a minute. But yeah, it was the kids won't know the struggle. But the idea is, be a fan, but there's a wall that you hit where the fandom stops and it becomes an intrusion. The guy is going through whatever he's going through. Let him do that. And then when he comes back, he'll come back. And if he doesn't, follow him there too. If he opens up a promotion on the moon, get a space shoot, follow him to the moon. But just let him do what he needs to do so he can come back better than ever. If you're a fan, you'll appreciate that.
Exactly. More than anything else, let Malakai Black have the time he needs to rest up, get himself together, and whatever, and quit worrying about all this other crap. Hell, that's what he says. Like, give me some space. Chill the hell out.
Let me live. That's it.
Exactly. Just chill the hell out, folks. Take a breath.
Until Bray Wyatt takes over the House of Blacks. And
we will see. Well, folks, we have hit our time. Another week here on the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast, each and every Thursday night, live, 8 p.m. Eastern, on all of your social media, Twitter, YouTube tonight, Twitch, all kinds of platforms. And of course, the next day in podcast form on all your favorite podcast platforms, whether it's audio or video, we got you covered with some fun wrestling talk each and every week here on the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. Check out biggoldbelt.com and of course, Big Gold Belt on all social media platforms. We got all kinds of stuff going on. So
we got a Patreon too.
That's true. The Patreon too. No matter what it is, we got something going on, and Lord knows next week we'll see what kind of crowd we have here. And we'll be closer to Extreme Rules. We'll have another week at AEW. Maybe we'll have some hints about the White Rabbit. We will see where we stand 7 days from now when we check in with you again next time, folks. So thanks for tuning in. I'm Will, Damian, and Jamal. Thanks for being here. Everybody stay safe, and we will see you again next week, folks. Thanks for tuning in.
All I really need, that big old belt.